Hey, Carl and Richard here. As you may have heard, NDC is back offering their incredible in-person conferences around the world, and we'd like to tell you about them.
NDC Oslo will be May 21st through the 25th. The early bird discount for NDC Oslo ends February 17th. Go to ndcoslo.com to register.
NDC Copenhagen is happening August 27th through the 31st. Go to ndccopenhagen.com for more information.
NDC Porto is happening October 16th through the 20th. The early bird discount for NDC Porto ends July 21st. Go to ndcporto.com to register.
And check out the full lineup of conferences at ndcconferences.com. Psst. How'd you like to listen to .NET Rocks with no ads? Easy. Become a patron. For just $5 a month, you get access to a private RSS feed where all the shows have no ads. $20 a month will get you that and a special .NET Rocks patron mug. Sign up now at patreon.netrocks.com.
Hey, Stockholm! It's .NET Rocks! Wow. 40,000 people in this little room.
An enthusiastic throng.
Yes. Well, Richard and I are very happy to be here at Stockholm at Swetugg. Let's give the conference people a round of applause. It's been a great conference. How's it been for you?
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. Did you do your talk yet?
No, that's tomorrow morning.
Ah, cool.
Yeah. So,
what are you talking about? The history of .NET
doing the
or
history
something?
of something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not that I know anything about it.
From mono to MAUI, right?
No, that's a different talk.
Oh, different talk.
That's a talk I'm writing right now.
Ah, okay. Anyway.
But I'm going back over a bunch of interviews I did with Miguel Diaz-Casa and reminding myself of all kinds of gory details.
Right.
So it's going to be fun.
The best details we share in the bar, not with you guys.
Yeah. There are sober details and not so sober details.
Anyway, we're here to talk about MAUI with two people from the MAUI team, David Ortinau and Maddy Montaquila. Montaquila, which as I understand means butter in Italian, so we're just going to call you Maddy Butter.
Perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
But before we talk to them, we have this little matter of better know a framework. So roll the crazy music.
All right, buddy, what do you got?
Actually, what I have is something personal.
Oh.
Yeah, I decided to make my first personal podcast. I mean, I've only been a podcast pioneer for the last 20 years.
Or so, yeah.
Yeah. .NET Rocks was one of the first podcasts. It started at least a year and a half before the word podcast was coined. Mm-hmm. And so in 2002, we did our first episode. So we've been doing this a long time. There was only a couple other podcasts at the time. So we were probably one of the first. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I decided to do a podcast where I'm not talking about .NET, not necessarily, not talking about music because I'm a musician, not talking about keto because I do that. I just want to interview some of the smartest people that I've met in my travels all over the world that I think are interesting in general. And so it's called No Excuse for Boredom. And the shortcut, it's a Patreon podcast. So that means the first one's free. It's like crack. The first one's free. And then if you want to buy me a coffee every month, you can get the rest of them. So the shortcut is noexcuse.pwop.com.
Awesome.
Yep. So there you go. That's what I got.
That's what you're doing. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So who's talking to us, Richard?
I grabbed a comment off of show 1730, which is the one we did back in March of 2021, a little over a year ago. We were talking about .NET 6 with one Daniel Roth. Maybe you've heard of him.
Yeah.
And one of our favorites. And, of course, he talked about all kinds of things in .NET 6, but a lot about MAUI at the time. And this comment comes from Sean Prislak, who commented on the day that it published. He said, I have two questions. First, with Xamarin, there seems to be a move for Xamarin Forms to draw its own controls rather than use the native ones. In the context of a Windows app, is there a difference between a MAUI control and native Windows controls? It makes sense to draw everything yourself and keep things consistent between platforms. I think I'm going to pump that over to those two
Absolutely.
when we get to that point. And then the second question is, I have just been trying to get a hyperlink centered in a div.
Oh.
my favorite.
What
On a
are you
web
trying to
page
do? I mean, that's crazy talk.
in ASP.NET. When will we get XAML for web pages?
Well,
Surely can't be that hard to map XAML onto HTML.
WebView 2.
Well, it's funny to think about going back to the very beginning of XAML, the original proposition internal to Microsoft, like in 2001.
Right.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
So, Sean, thank you so much for your comment. And a copy of Music to Go By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Go By, write a comment on the website, .netrocks.com, or on the Facebooks. We publish every show there. And if you comment there and they read it on the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Go By.
And definitely don't follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Mastodon. I'm at Carl Franklin at Tech Hub Social.
I'm Rich Campbell at Mastodon Social.
Yeah. So send us a toot.
Because that's funny.
Because it is. Just by itself, send us a
Toots
toot.
are funny.
Toots are funny. That's right. All right. I am going to formally introduce David and Maddy to you. David Ortinau is Principal Product Manager for .NET at Microsoft, focused on .NET MAUI. .NET developer since 2002. About the time .NET Rocks started, and versed in a range of programming languages. David's developed web, environmental, and mobile experiences for a wide variety of industries. After several successes with tech startups and running his own software company, David joined Microsoft to follow his passion, creating tools that help developers create better app experiences. When not at a computer or with his family, he's running through the woods. That's really cool and demands an explanation.
Very specific, Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, well, I'm not actually in the Northwest. I'm in Missouri.
Okay, like the Northwest, only not at all.
I love the Northwest because I can run more through the woods there. But as somebody who picked up running later in life, I didn't really want to run on roads.
Yeah.
It wasn't my thing, dodging cars. So I chose to run through the woods.
My mother started running at 75.
Oh.
She's 90 now. We have no idea where the hell she is.
The challenge with Pacific Northwest running is occasionally running into a bear.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You got to know what to do.
And Maddy Butter, otherwise known as Maddy Montaquila, is a program manager at Microsoft on the .NET team. She's been on the team since 2018, working on Xamarin and now .NET MAUI tooling. She first worked with the Xamarin team as a Microsoft intern and realized the impact she could have creating amazing developer tools and frameworks. So let's give them both a big round of applause. So you want to start with the comment?
Yeah, we might as well go with the comment right off the bat. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it is normal to use a sort of unified control that works across devices so that it's consistent rather than trying to use native controls.
Would you like to take it? Or do you want me to take it?
I was going to start and say right now, the WinUI controls we use are the native ones.
Are the native controls.
So to answer the question, easy answer before Dave gives you, the history of life itself. WinUI uses the native controls for MAUI right now.
So when it's Windows.
It
is native controls.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's Android widgets. When it's iOS, it's UIKit.
Okay.
And when it's on the Mac, it's also UIKit through Mac Catalyst. So yes, but the nice way in which the team has architected those controls is you can swap out the implementation very easily.
Right.
And so others, like Javier from the core team, has a collection of all drawn with graphics controls called Aloha Kit. And so it's his personal project and everything, but I think the name is like worth a look alone, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you really have that choice, and we've always supported Skia Sharp, which is cross-platform drawing engine. So
you get to choose.
You get to choose.
But this also gets into a philosophical issue around should apps on devices look like apps from the device, or should they be consistent across all of the devices?
Does it have to be? Does it have to be either or? Can
I
it be
don't
both
think
and?
so.
Be both.
No.
Yeah.
My favorite example is always the settings page. Like, I don't want my iPhone settings page to look like an Android settings page.
Right.
Settings pages just are a bunch of things and toggles and things. It should just look the way that it should look.
Right.
But when things are, heavily designed or branded or blah, 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 that's when you're like, oh, like that actually would make sense to draw, or that should really look the same.
Yeah.
Tutorials,
No,
all that
I'm
stuff.
going to put on my IT director hat. And it's like, I would like to reduce the number of help desk tickets, please.
Yeah.
And so the fact that the app looks the same on all devices means it's cheaper for me to support.
True.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. And one of the reasons we love coming to conferences such as Swetugg is to be able to meet developers and people from companies across different categories, right? And find out, what do you need for those controls? You know, I can have an opinion. I could push an agenda, but really what I need to know is, what do we need to be building for you? So if you are, as Rich said, looking at it as a overhead thing, I want to have less support tickets because of the divergence of platforms. You want one set of controls, then I need to hear that loud and clear, in a visible way so that I can bring all that customer evidence, we call it, right?
Yeah.
He just made air quotes for those of you listening.
Yeah.
I did.
Air quotes on a podcast.
Can I quickly poll the audience, and you can raise your hand and we'll translate that for the listeners. How many of you have actually built an app with MAUI?
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice.
I'm going to say 10, 20%.
10. Yeah.
10%. Okay. Yeah. So that's good. And how many of you are here for us to convince you that you should?
Okay,
A lot more hands went up.
Ready
How
to
many
be
people
persuaded.
have done Xamarin Forms? Okay.
Wow,
Keep
okay.
your hand up if it worked. A lot of hands came down. All right.
Yep.
So I want to say something right off the bat in that I've had experience with Xamarin Forms from the get-go.
Yeah, you taught
and
workshops on it.
I taught workshops. In fact, I taught workshops at Dev Intersection, Richard's conference. And the whole first half of the day up to lunch was just getting everybody's laptops up to the point where they could run a Xamarin Forms
Could
app.
compile an app.
Just because there's so many moving parts in Xamarin, and now in MAUI too. But the experience when you crack open Visual Studio 2022, once you have the MAUI workload installed, everything just works. And it really is amazing how they made that happen. Like they downloaded all the Android SDKs and all the stuff that you need under the hood that you had to do by hand. And that changed every time there was a new drop. They fixed all that. So the experience right out of the gate of building a MAUI app is one of pleasure, not of pain. So I wanted to thank you guys for that.
We'd love to hear it. We'd love to hear it.
And you should definitely crack it open and try it.
Who needs a cross-platform app? Like you're collecting customer evidence. Like who's, I mean, lots of people want it, right? The real question is who really needs it? Like when they grab this toolkit, they're right away like, it's going to be on these platforms. Like what's the use cases?
There are a lot. We've been doing this whole like, who develops for client anymore and why? Why not just write web stuff?
Yeah.
Web is everywhere. I can name some examples because if I try to list all the categories, I will have a complete meltdown probably. But my favorite one personally that we talk to for customers are people who are writing like line of business, internal apps, managing their workforce, managing so that people can access internal resources or whatever it is. We have a couple airlines that use it for like things like checking if the plane should be able to take off or who's on your flight. What is the roster of passengers on board? And so all the employees have their own devices and they have to be able to get that app onto the device, whether that's in the store or not, the app store, or the Play Store, or whatever it is. And then it has to have like enough branding and be able to log in with their internal stuff, but it also should be able to work without cell phone service if you're in a plane, or it should be able to work if you're in a region that you're working on the electricity. We have a lot of electrical utility companies that use it and they map out like, oh, that's where the power lines are, so I shouldn't drill a hole there.
Right.
All these types of things.
Do you have any insight as to whether there's more people that want to do them as internal applications versus in the store?
I don't know if it's more or less. I think we've been focusing a lot on these types of customers lately because they're willing to try the MAUI thing, and usually their apps UI is very like, it does this thing, it's super defined.
Yeah. And they know how much it costs to get them there.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Like that to me makes a lot of sense when you're bringing a new stack in. It's like, okay, you've already gone through the pain of implementing this app across multiple devices once. Now, is this better?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, there are a bunch of others. I don't know which examples come to your mind.
I mean, just backing up to what you just asked, when we poll through surveys and whatnot, you know, where are you distributing and how are you distributing your applications? More than 50% are using the app stores.
Okay.
And some of them are doing it for enterprise apps, for those line of business apps. That's their distribution mechanism.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason that many of them have chosen cross-platform, and what we generally hear is that their users, it's a bring your own device type situation. If we were, a large parcel distribution company of some kind.
Not that I would know of any.
I have no idea what
And
you're
they
talking about.
were to standardize all of their devices on one platform, then they can go that direction. But then they come back to us and say, hey, we're going into a whole new market globally. And that operating system, those devices are not there.
Right.
Or they're not, they're too expensive for
that audience.
And so then they need to support, B, C, different platform.
Yeah.
And when you have a platform like .NET, you don't have to rewrite that to get it there. We introduce that platform for you. We give you the UI controls if you're not already using the one control that runs everywhere. And you extend onto that platform without rebuilding your app. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, we talk about cross-platform as a thing. It's usually a mix. It's not all four things MAUI supports. MAUI's Android, iOS, Mac, and Windows.
Right.
Typically, most applications, except for my demos and the demos that we write, are not going to actually run across all four of those. We find that most are using a web app, hopefully Blazor, but could be Angular, could be React.
Yeah.
And then they want to have that more native experience on mobile, and those are really the magical ones.
iOS and Android.
Yep. That combination of things is really interesting, which is why we introduced the Blazor Hybrid.
Right.
And we also have a hybrid web view that is in experiment right now to support those Angular and React things. So, and then desktop, you're going to build a native desktop app, and you're going to want to share it very often with those mobile platforms. So, why rewrite things? Let's start reusing them. So, code sharing has always been a, big win, right?
Sure.
For cross-platform.
But really being able to build a client that is 100% the same code base and compiles to iOS and Android seems holy grail-ish. I've seen it with Flutter, but it does seem like MAUI can do that.
Did you come to my talk?
I did not.
Anyone here at my talk? Did you see my app running on all four platforms?
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful.
Yeah.
It's legit.
It's legit.
Yeah. And not just demoware.
Definitely.
Well, and the flexibility you have, you mentioned Flutter, and if you look at their controls, they still have iOS specific controls and Android specific controls, right? So yeah, it's one code base, but you're going to make some choices per platform so that while you get the consistency you want, you still cater to the platform idioms to some degree, and you determine how important that is for you and your users. If you don't care at all and you just want to make sure that the Android user sitting next to the iOS user can tell them how to do a work task, then you have that choice. And within MAUI, you have all of that flexibility. You can make it as responsive as you want to, and you can make it as platform unique as you want to. And what we really love, what we find that our customers choose us for often is the ability to use .NET to get right into the internal APIs of Apple and Google. The same stuff you would be doing if you were doing Objective-C, Swift. And, if you have some Objective-C, Swift, Java, or Kotlin, and you need to bring that to the party too, you totally can. I'm not saying that's an easy skill set. That's not an easy move.
Yeah.
But you have that in your back pocket also. So you really don't have any blockers.
There's one, I wouldn't say hidden because everybody in my circle knows about it, but it's a hidden gem in MAUI. And that is if you've done any Xamarin Forms, the Xamarin Essentials or Xamarin Forms Essentials, I think it is this curated library from the community and some from Microsoft. That's just this whole library of things that everybody needs to do when they write a mobile app. And a lot of it is accessing native hardware and all that stuff. But instead of having implementations on every platform, they moved it all up into the application layer. So at the UI level, you can, and they have it for MAUI. They just brought it into MAUI. You can access, the gyroscope and the compass and the, whatever else it is, access files. Those kinds, file picker, those kinds of things are just at the app level now, and they're built in. That's just wonderful.
And they're native. Secure storage is a big one. Web authentication is another big one.
Yeah.
Turning on the flashlight, obviously.
Turning on the flashlight is
most important.
You can make that your first MAUI app for those who are interested.
Right.
Flashlight app.
If anyone who wants to build a fart app, you can use Gerald Versluis's Play media.
Would you call it Tutor? What would you call it?
I used that today in my app to play .NET Rocks episodes.
There you go.
And it's just
That's right. We just got the media player.
Works on every
Yeah.
platform.
Yeah, and you have the media element, so you have the simple audio player. Is that what it's called? Yeah, simple audio player.
Plug into
I just named
audio.
it, Gerald. I just named it the simple audio player.
Yeah.
And it's out there as a separate NuGet, but then within the community toolkit, we also have now the media element,
Right.
which is like, I guess, the granddaddy.
It does
of
a lot
them all.
more.
I don't know.
So the simple player and the not so simple player.
Yeah, exactly. Hard to use player. That's probably not the way to name it. Yeah.
No, probably not.
I have to say though,
It's not hard.
like pretty nice that there are community packages that
Yes.
you can just kind of pull in that do things for you,
Yep.
which is always helpful.
It does. Well, the community certainly rallied around Blazor in a big way. It still seems like it's early days for MAUI to go down that same path, but it has possibilities.
The Xamarin Forms community has been out there, and a lot of that stuff has been, as I was saying, just incorporated as MAUI.
What is the import process for a Xamarin Forms app to MAUI?
It depends on your app, like all questions.
Yes.
We have a couple different ways that we've seen people do it so far. So the most simple method, and probably the one that's going to get you into the least trouble, is you create a new MAUI app and you copy paste things over feature by feature or whatever, piece by piece, and you test it as you go.
So no import, build gradually, but a lot of that code is copy pastable. It's all C#.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. The real things that change between MAUI and Xamarin Forms are the namespaces, and a couple very specific APIs, and then the actual project file. So the nice thing is any Xamarin Forms layouts are just going to work the exact same. You don't have to rewrite the XAML. You don't have to write the .NET because it's just .NET. So we have a tool, the Upgrade Assistant, which is a command line based tool, which will go and do the namespace replacements for you. It'll do the SDK style project upgrade. It will make sure that you have the right multi-targeting things, and it will keep it into separate projects. It won't try to smush it all into one MAUI project, which is the default, but you can go ahead and do that on your own. Depending on your app, that gets you like 60 to 85% of the way there when all works well. There are always going to be specific things, edge cases, weird things you're doing.
Third-party
tools, all different stuff. And so what we've been doing as a team is upgrading apps with their tool, figuring out what it didn't do, looking at those patterns and what we can like reasonably repeatedly add back into the tool, and then doing that. So it's getting better. I mean, we didn't even have XAML analyzing in it until probably a couple months ago. So it's being iterated on pretty rapidly, but it's getting you a good chunk of the way there. I would only recommend using that though if you're pretty comfortable with your code base and hitting F5 and then seeing what the error is and going and finding that error and figuring out whether you need to fix it or if there's a setting you need to turn on or something.
Right. Otherwise, you'll get an import and you're just like, I can't make this work.
Yeah.
You get tangled up.
I don't know if you know the exact answer, but it's kind of a hypothetical question. How much money and time do you think Microsoft wastes getting around Apple's completely stupid rules?
I can tell you how much time and money I've wasted on therapy.
Where's the?
And
Do you have a bleep
facials?
You can swear. We'll
And
bleep
the
it.
bar?
Yeah, that sounds like a bar conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those guys.
That's what Carl said. Not me or Dave.
Okay.
We love Apple.
Yeah,
They're a great partner.
They are.
They make really cool stuff.
They do. Yeah. And I like little things like when I pull up my Mac, my phone's already connected to Wi-Fi. It says, "Would you like to share the Wi-Fi password with your Mac?" Oh, yes, I would.
But isn't that what is the most frustrating part? Because you know they can make it easy.
Right.
Yeah.
So why is it
so hard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different divisions.
Yeah. And different beliefs.
Well, one thing I wanted to say is Maddy was talking about the upgrade real quick. An admonition for those who are entertaining the move from Xamarin Forms to MAUI. Be careful not to scope creep. You're going to move some code. Probably not the best time to refactor major features in your application.
Yeah.
Just get it there first.
Yeah.
Right?
Get it running.
And then go undertake that. I've talked to so many folks who have done their migrations, but turns out they're like, oh yeah, I rewrote all that, and it took forever. And I'm like,
So
Well, that's a choice you're allowed to make.
Yeah.
But
it wasn't the migration was hard. Is that while I'm here, yourself to death.
Right.
Yeah.
While the engine is on the floor,
Yeah.
we're going to go ahead and clean up all this rust.
Do all
That's
the things.
basically how we built Maui. I mean,
There
we
was
ripped the lid off of Xamarin Forms, and we took 2 years just kind of,
yeah.
and then we shipped it.
There were a lot of meetings where it was like, okay, we're going to do all these extra things, and we had to talk very seriously about, is that the most valuable thing for us to do, given the time we have?
Well, and knowing that the moment it touches the customer, it's going to change. The customer is going to use it in a way you haven't thought of. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is why we shipped as quickly as we could. I mean, we were
And
still a
even then,
little
took a
delayed.
while.
Yeah.
Well, how many different teams are interested in how what you did was, going to work for them?
Ooh, we've had a great time with the .NET team, just in general.
Yeah.
Xamarin became like officially part of .NET right before we started actually doing the work to create Maui,
Right.
which was right before the little pandemic we've been experiencing.
A
I
little
remember
thing,
being
yeah.
in
little
Redmond, and Dave and James Montemagno were like, we have this great idea, and we're going to ship it at build in 3 months. And I was like, okay, let's do it.
Wah, wah.
Yeah. But we really became like a first party part of .NET for the first time, which is really like reflected a lot in our messaging and how well things work too. So the nice thing about that is .NET has been able to use Maui as like their, test thing for workloads. Maui were one of the first ones who really used that seriously. We've broken a lot of their stuff and then they've had to fix it. So we've made .NET a lot more resilient in a lot of
great.
ways. Yeah. So it's been really fun. And so, yeah, we've been giving back to the .NET and the broader Visual Studio team a lot. I think now is the time that, since we're kind of out there, we can start giving back to the rest of the Microsoft orgs in some way. We've definitely challenged some, but we'll see.
And what about the XAML flavor? Like, it was .NET Xamarin Forms, and did the WPF team have anything to say about that? And then there was that old standard thing. I'm sure that wasn't easy.
No, but the thing is, actually, we were on this ghost tour last night, and the wonderful host of the whole thing, she, in between everything. But the thing about it is, that was the transition from everything. So I'm sorry, I just caught myself on that.
The thing is,
so XAML flavors. I wasn't trying to dodge the question.
No, please. It's okay.
When we talk to Xamarin customers, they're like, we came from WPF. We've been using Xamarin Forms for a while. We're good with it. It does what we need it to do.
Right.
But then we would talk to others who hadn't made the transition, and the XAML was somewhat of a sticking point for them. But by and large, the big thing we heard from customers that were seriously going to use the product was, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
The XAML flavor, it really isn't a big deal.
Yeah.
We can do what we need to do.
Yeah.
I think the bigger question is XAML or no XAML.
Yeah. I think of the things that, I've done XAML for a long time, and the things that I always got hung up on in XAML, WPF XAML, is binding.
Yeah.
The binding syntax is so complex, and I'm always looking and consulting people. I always end up calling Billy Hollis because, it's like, hey, how do I fix this? He goes, oh, God, I see the problem right here. But then Xamarin Forms, XAML is better binding wise, and I'm glad you chose that. But Blazor binding is by far the easiest and best.
it's clean.
It's
very
so
clean.
clean. Thank you, Steve Sanderson.
Yeah.
Round of applause for Steve Sanderson. Come on.
Hi, Steve.
This guy's amazing.
And with that, I got to interrupt for one moment for this very important message. And we're back. It's .NET Rocks. I'm Richard Campbell. That's Carl Franklin.
Hey.
Sitting with our friends David and Maddy, talking a little Maui. And the wonder that is Steve Sanderson, who's continuing to be more and more wonder. I'm pursuing him for his Blazor United current
He's as
proposals.
brilliant and as he is humble.
Every
as
time,
humble as he is brilliant. It's unbelievable. Hi, I'm Steve. I work on the ASP.NET team.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm about to change your life with this demo.
And he tells the stories in his demos so well. It always really lands.
Yeah.
I would love to be as good a presenter as he is.
Just takes you through the problem as he thought about it and worked on it piece by piece.
Yeah. So the Blazor Hybrid Maui story is just wow. Just wow.
I think if you, web's your skill set. B, if you really want that same UI everywhere, because it's going to be web pixels. Maybe even C, you still want to have some native UI, which you can blend in at your discretion. Then that's a fantastic way to go. One of the main reasons that we pursued it was because we were hearing from a lot of large organizations, hey, I've got a team of mobile developers over here doing stuff, but I've also got this team of web developers doing ASP.NET stuff. How can we get these folks working together? And I need to bring some pieces, probably not all of the website, into those experiences.
Yeah.
And so this was one of the ways in which we were like, let's dip our toes in the water. It's a pretty relatively easy thing for us to do. It's one control for us, and see what the uptake is. And it really has been very interesting to see the usage of MAUI grow over Xamarin with the introduction of this Blazor. I don't know. I would contribute all the growth that we've seen to the Blazor Hybrid and bringing those developers into the fold. But
no, I have not done this, but it is possible for you to take a Blazor app and turn all those pages and components into a Razor class library, export them as a DLL, bring it over to a MAUI app, and poof, there's your UI.
yeah.
Yep.
Your code behind's probably going to change a little bit.
Well, and I think we have a template that actually is shipping now, or is that a Net 8 template? We don't remember. There is a template. If it's not there now, it's coming to a Visual Studio near you.
Okay.
That actually has your Blazor app with that Razor class library and the MAUI front end to it. So,
Wow.
And you just bring that stuff in and it just works.
It's awesome.
Just works. People like it when it just works.
IJW technology.
Yeah. Yep. I think we were all pretty surprised with how much Blazor Hybrid took off just in general. Because we were like, obviously it's cool. Blazor's fun. They have Jeff Fritz walking around wearing a purple sequin blazer. Like, we should hop on that train. That seems cool. Mm-hmm. And then we started talking about Blazor Hybrid and people were like, whoa, this is huge. And we were like, oh, that's good. That's good. We like when we do the right thing.
By the way, you can write a WPF app in Blazor too.
Mm-hmm.
And WinForms.
What?
Yeah, and WinForms.
Yeah, and Windows Forms.
But should you?
Yes. Yes, you should. Yes, Richard.
Folks have WPF apps. They're out there.
Yeah.
And you need to modernize them in some way, shape, or form. So a lot of conversations we have are around what's my transition look like between WPF and MAUI. How do I get on the latest bits? And is there a intermediate path for me to get there? So Blazor Hybrid is a really good.
You don't think of WPF as that old, but it is. It's spooky to think about. A 15-year-old WPF app is a possibility.
And it works for people, they like it.
WPF also has some hooks into Windows that do things that the browser probably can't do. And I'm thinking just like graphical things. But, CSS, XAML.
Yeah. We have this little line now that we have in some slides. And on one side of it is power. And on the other side of it is reach. Yeah. And that's how we describe .NET. Yeah. So reach is web, right? Like ASP and ASP.NET and Blazor and all those things. Power is like to the metal WPF. And a little bit to the side of that is MAUI, because it's still pretty powerful. And then somewhere in the middle-ish is Blazor Hybrid. And then in between Blazor and that is PWAs and whatever it is. But I've started to really think about it that way, where it's like, do you want to have everything on the metal? Do you need to do this graphic stuff? Or do you just need it to be like a good app that works, that does the things that devices do?
Right.
Or does it just need to be a website? I mean, you shouldn't build an app just to build an app if it doesn't need to be.
So there's somebody came up to me after my talk and said, does it feel like a hybrid app or does it feel like a native app? And I can't tell the difference between one or the other. There really isn't any performance difference, especially if you're doing line of business stuff and whatever, most mobile apps do. But memory, you do have to load the Edge engine and it's going to take up some more memory. So I wouldn't be so concerned about the performance of a hybrid app. But if memory is an issue, I mean, I have a terabyte of memory on my freaking iPhone. It doesn't matter to me, but not everybody does.
Right.
Yeah.
Relatively few people do. You are at the top of the tree on that.
I'm a diva.
Yeah.
Yeah. My wife tells me that all the time. Are we getting the diva model today, honey? Yes.
Well,
Yes,
it would
we
be
are.
wonderful to have just one solution that worked absolutely the best everywhere, right?
Right.
But, when I talk to a customer and they have, a Linux-based medical device, right? And it's a small platform and the processor is super slow.
Yeah.
And they only have certain megabytes or maybe it's not going to be great for that.
Yeah.
The Blazor Hybrid with the payload that you're going to have to get to that type of an
Has a
environment.
shot at running there.
Yeah, it might, right, yeah. But is that going to be the right thing for you to do? Probably not.
Yeah, it's
so,
probably a bit much.
yeah.
What's the Tizen story? I didn't even know what Tizen was until I saw it on the list of platforms that MAUI supports.
Yeah, so this is from Samsung Research Division. So for a very long time, Samsung as a company has been a major contributor to .NET.
Yeah.
I think they're amongst the largest as an entity. And so they have lots of products. Many of us may have Samsung products. I don't know if they're super popular up here, but whether it's refrigerators, televisions, used to be their watches, although the watches are now running on Android Wear. Yeah. But a variety of other things, and they run their own operating system called Tizen. And so with
TVs, right?
The TVs in particular, I
Yeah.
have that Samsung frame in my house. I was able to convince the family it was a good idea.
How does one install or test a Tizen app on a Tizen TV connected to your computer? How does that work?
That's a great
They
question.
all have USB ports now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just go boop.
No,
Okay.
they
Just
have
like
all got
that.
ports.
That should work.
Yeah.
Do you have to do the noise?
You do have to do the noise. I'll plug it into my stove when I get home in a couple of days, and I'll let you know.
You're going to boop your stove.
I would
boot my
like to
stove,
do
yeah.
a demo of that. I would like to figure out how that works. I probably will.
I
No,
used
that's
to worry
great.
about IP addresses on all the devices. Now I have to worry about USB ports on all the devices.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, for a while, LG fridges were showing up on the Visual Studio pair to Mac dialogue. So it would be like Maddy's MacBook Pro, LG, a bunch of random strings. And it was like, oh, can I use my fridge as a build host?
Yeah.
Overheard on .NET Rocks. Can I use my fridge as the build host? Okay.
Surely.
But it is still very much a niche market. But
Yeah.
I mean,
it is.
I don't see anything disrupting the iOS Android duopoly anytime soon. I wish there was. I don't think I've missed Windows Phone more than right now.
Yeah.
Like, really, really wish there was another ecosystem, but there isn't, and it doesn't look like there's gonna be. It's just too much stuff.
Yeah. The coolest thing about Tizen is that they worked with us, but they did all of the contributions themselves.
Right.
So obviously we helped them and we responded to their emails and we made sure that things didn't break them. But
Make sure they're working properly with .NET and with the libraries. And
But
then,
yeah, like an entire third-party entity was able to go and stick their own backend into MAUI and ship it and have it be part of the story.
that's
cool.
remarkable.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Do we need to define backend?
Sure.
A platform.
Platform. I don't know. Yeah. Target.
Sometimes I wonder when we say things like this, do people grasp what we're actually talking about? Because I don't know that I
don't.
Yeah. Everything.
That's the main thing I noticed when I joined Microsoft, and in particular, going back to the XAML conversation, is people kept saying XAML, and at some point, not too long into joining, I was like, can we please all define what we think XAML means? Because you keep saying XAML platform, XAML controls, XAML this. I'm like, to us, it's just XML.
Right.
Like, that's literally where it ends.
It's XML.
But, that's a totally different story depending on where you go and who you talk
Drop
to.
one
So,
A.
Yeah.
It's all the end
I
there.
know. It's almost like it's an acronym.
XML.
Small.
Yeah. But I mean, ultimately, it's what parses that.
Yeah.
It makes the difference as to what's going to happen from there.
I don't mean extra medium large. No, sir. Sorry, we've been on this main Boston kick.
Yeah. Going on
Feels like
for a
home.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, are there any more platforms on the horizon that we should be thinking about?
I mean, I think the main one that we get asked about all the time is Linux.
Yeah. I got asked about that in my talk today.
Yeah.
So wouldn't that ultimately mean some Linux GUI? So
Linux desktop.
GNOME or
Well, I mean, Linux GUI initially could be a browser, right? It could be Blazor Hybrid initially. So, and that's really where the majority of the effort and cost comes for us, is building the controls.
Right.
Like if somebody else out there, I don't know, had a set of controls and could just provide them.
Again,
Right.
boop, right in.
Boop.
The boop control.
Then we can host and maintain the platform itself and somebody else. And I'm jealous of Blazor because they maintain no controls.
Right.
None.
Great solution.
I think we may have forced them to inherit their first control, the Blazor web view that they host in our stuff.
Right.
But other than that, yeah, it's all community and third party stuff. I mean, that's I'm super jealous of that.
Yeah.
So Linux is certainly one, and then we have reasons to potentially add a WPF. Xamarin Forms had WPF.
Yeah.
And UWP and Linux. So it had all of those things contributed. And we just had not brought all of that to MAUI yet. But we have.
But would those just be transitory controls? Like you'd use these because you're migrating something and eventually be rebuilt off of it?
Yeah.
Like it's tough the longer you wait to bring that in, the less relevant it becomes.
Yeah, to a degree. There's some reasons why WPF might be an alternative to WinUI 3 and WinApp SDK for some customers. Although the better experience on Windows is going to be WinApp SDK, WinUI 3.
Yeah.
But there are some needs to have an alternative. So the other thing about this, and we haven't really talked about this, is you can embed controls and pages, individual controls or pages from MAUI in any platform that we have a backend for. So in that way, you could take, a widget that you have in your mobile app and you could plop that into a WPF app. This is different than what you know of as XAML islands.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
It's a much more lightweight. It's just a translation. Right. You're just using a cross-platform, naming to express your UI, but all of the actual UI that appears in your app is the native UI. So, so with that embedding, that's very exciting, and it's another strategy for modernizing. A lot of these WPF apps are very large, and to rewrite the entire thing from scratch is quite a proposition.
Yeah, you don't know when that's going to happen.
Yeah. So having any way at all to go piece by piece forward.
So I want to talk about third-party tools for a minute. I know that in the MAUI XAML land, you have MAUI controls that were probably created from or offshoots of Xamarin Forms controls in the third party. So a company like DevExpress or Telerik or whatever, they have their Xamarin Forms controls, and then they come out with their MAUI versions, which hopefully have the same interface. And then the Blazor Hybrid story, you can use those same third-party companies' Blazor controls that are meant for the web in a MAUI app.
Yep.
What? I mean, that's insane, right?
It's awesome.
And what's cool is that it's just UI, right? So Blazor is a framework that is a UI framework, yes. And in the web, you're in a sandbox. But if you take that same markup and run it in a MAUI app, you're running on the native hardware. You don't have it's not a web product at all.
Are there noticeable overheads to any of that? I mean, you're obviously doing translation in there somewhere. I could imagine somebody writing a bad control that then when it was interpreted by the MAUI stack to run it, you'd feel it.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of ways to write bad code and apps. I mean,
50 ways to blow your stack.
Nobody here in this room has ever written bad line of code. I'm sure.
Not a bit.
Never.
So I mean, there's certainly that out there, but that's why you check the stars on the GitHub before you go check it out, and the downloads on the NuGets, and see if it's really right for your app.
Mm-hmm.
So you've only a couple of versions in. What's on the roadmap? What are we missing?
Well, we ship now with the major versions of .NET, so that's exciting. Our GA release was halfway through .NET 6 lifespan, so we kind of hooked into that, and then .NET 7 we were all together, woo! And now .NET 8 we're going to do that again.
So that's November.
That's November, which we're doing planning for now. So there are a lot of ideas. I mean, maybe more platforms like Dave was talking about. That could be something on there. One thing we hear a lot is, I want to use a library, but it only exists in Swift and Kotlin.
Right.
There's no .NET version. How do I do that without it being awful? Because you can do it now, but it's, it's a bit of a power user scenario, right? Like, we'd like to make that easier. What's the cloud story for building mobile apps? Like, now you have this app that you're building with MAUI, and MAUI's cool and great and awesome. How do you enterprise that? How do you do the CI/CD, and how do you do the testing and all the different things?
Right.
So there are a whole bunch of different facets of it. of course, quality. We are just fixing bugs like crazy people right now. We are flying bug fixes off the shelf, and we're releasing service releases almost every month, I think, into .NET 7.
But it's just, you've got a whole lot of people doing different things with it now and showing edges you didn't see.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. So there are a few experiences for desktop in particular that we will add for .NET 8 and are being worked on. Some cursor related things, some keyboard listener type stuff that was missing from before. But for the most part, in the SDK itself, it's all going to be bug fixing and quality. That's like the main thing, because we did ship in a hurry with a stable API, but we now know we need to address some things. The great news is as of right now, we have more people working in the MAUI SDK than ever before, which is exciting. So I'm looking forward to seeing an increased velocity and from contributors also, because we really haven't had the focus, the attention to give towards the contributor story. And so picking the right time to open the doors more wide and ask for contributions also means that we need to be able to have the time ourselves to review those PRs and get them through. But we're seeing an uptick already of community PRs. And from contributors who also contributed to Xamarin Forums, we typically hear they like contributing to MAUI better. The organization of the project, the architecture, the things that we did around controls to decouple them from the platforms.
Pure side effects.
People love it,
It seems like with every rev, there's new things that I had to do with pragmas that are now just built in. So I like that. And a couple things on my wish list: notifications, make those easy across, and what was the other thing we were talking about? Oh, the MSAL authentication stuff needs to be a little easier, but those are the things that I expect will just become easy.
There. Yeah. They're conversations we're having, and I don't know. I think the nice thing about MAUI being that it's based on and is very similar to Xamarin Forms, although it is new. We learned so much, man, from building Xamarin. And we've learned a lot from building MAUI, but at least we were able to feed those learnings into the MAUI story.
You weren't starting over.
We weren't starting from scratch. Contributions are better, right? Just little things. We know how to talk about it better. We know how to talk to .NET developers about MAUI, and we know what .NET developers who aren't doing mobile right now want a lot more than we did before. So it's been fun. It's been complicated. As you mentioned, with Apple and all the external dependencies and everything in the world. But it's been fun.
It would have been easier to scorched earth start over.
Hey, there's still time.
No, maybe that ship sailed. But the team's ability to retain a massive amount of backwards compatibility for Xamarin customers.
There was a lot right.
I know that some folks are like, you could have done more. It's like, well, man, there's a line somewhere. So super pleased and excited that we see customers able to bring their apps forward, and those that are making new apps are even happier. So
absolutely.
Such as yourself, our number one fan.
I am. I build, that's my job, is to build apps on MAUI. To demo things. So if you have anything you want to see, send me an email.
They're all making flashlight apps,
aren't we all?
Well, when you start contributing, let us know.
I will. I will, absolutely. Hey, how about a big round of applause for David and Maddy? And we'll see you next time on .NET Rocks! .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Plop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and, of course, in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time. Transmit a band by the FCC. Yes, I'm a